although it's provided for by the Constitution. We pointed out that almost every single commissioner, Rudy Collins, Hopkinson, Joe Singh, Rudy Collins was a public servant and he was a chairman at one time. Hopkinson was a miner and he was a chairman. Joe Singh was once the head of the army and he became chairman. Suraj Bali is a vet. He was chairman. Only Dudnath Singh was eligible to be a judge, fit the first category. He pointed out that practice and a common understanding of the Constitution led us to believe this. But he said, no, this is my interpretation. It took us 2 months to try to get him to shift this position. I requested a meeting, did not want to meet. He said, let the Attorney General meet with one of your people. So now he relented, and they said, okay, you can submit other names, but we will give preference to the first category. So you can send from the fit and proper category. So he then subsequently sent me a list of criteria that are extra constitutional, and now is insisting that every member that I submit must meet these set of criteria. I said, if we apply the criteria to you, you wouldn't have been eligible the 2 times when your name was submitted, because the 2 times Hoyt submitted his name, he was already in the PNC for 30 years. I've submitted 12 professionals to the president, every one more qualified than he is. Many are judges, etc. And he is almost unilaterally being very dismissive of them. Contrary to practice, contrary to the common interpretation that PNC and PPP had over 25 years for approaching this matter. And so it is our feeling, and many others, that he wants to unilaterally appoint someone. He has said something that he doesn't want to, but that's our feeling. Now, if he does that, remember the Carter Center formula, then he will change the balance. He will change the balance at the Guyana Elections Commission, because it would no longer be 3-3 and the 7th person appointed through common understanding, but he will unilaterally appoint that person, so they'll have 4-3. And we know what has happened in the past. So that is a very, very dangerous situation that we are in. And you would see it gripping the entire society, and it's been a big concern there. And if someone can almost unilaterally move away from the Constitution like that, or accord his own interpretation without regard for the society and criticism or anything else, we shudder to think about how he will approach this matter. So that's the first issue. The second issue is about the separation of power. We have seen a consistent effort by the administration to undermine the different branches of government. And this is not new, because we saw that when they had the doctrine of paramountcy of the party. In the 70s and 80s, APNU believed that the party mattered more than the state. So we had our courts in Guyana, the party flag flew above our national flag on the courts in Guyana. Now, we've seen how the president has approached this matter. We amended the Constitution in 2001 to say that the Judicial Service Commission, the president shall act in accordance with the Judicial Service Commission. That is recommendations from the JSC. Prior to that, it was me. The president had a discretion. What happened? The president got some names from the JSC, 4 names, and for 1 year, he has refused to appoint those judges in flagrant violation of the Constitution. He's now moved because I think he feels that he has a different JSC. a different judicial service commission. But at one stage, for 3-4 months, we didn't have a court of appeal in Guyana. Just imagine that. No, for the first time in our history, we didn't have a court of appeal. And so we see a serious move. The Attorney General goes around saying, we put them there, they got to rule for us, you know, in Guyanese parlance. He threatened a judge to kill him in the open court, and the president did not see anything wrong with that. This is the Minister of Justice, the head of our bar, the Attorney General, threatened a judge to kill him in the court. The last person who did that to me, they found him dead when the judge ruled against him. And we see it on a daily basis. Luckily for us, we took Guyana into the Caribbean Court of Justice. So at least, and that was one of the things we did under the PPP, so at least we have an external review to decisions made in Guyana. Because I shudder to think, with the pressure that they're putting on the judiciary today, what will happen in the future. And then the parliament itself. If you look at the parliament, you will see what happens. We had established several committees under the People's Progressive Party, sectoral committees. Ministers are not supposed to sit on these committees because they are being reviewed, their sector, by these committees. They have violated that, ministers sit there. The Public Accounts Committee has never had a minister on it since independence. They put a minister now on the Public Accounts Committee. They control the agenda of Parliament. We have a complex bills like the terrorism bill, nearly 200 pages, and they'll bring it for 2 hours of debate and pass it. We urge that it will go to a select committee. They've refused to do that. Refused to send it to select committee. And let me give you an example of the Coroner's Act. The government said that there is urgency in passing a new Coroner's Act because there are many cases that they needed to start some investigations. So they pushed it through Parliament in a single setting. In the Act, they had a feature that if a person of Asiatic origin, Indo-Guyanese or a Chinese person, were to be killed, before you start the inquiry, you have to contact the Immigration Agent General. So now that is a feature of the colonial era. We don't have an Immigration Agent General anymore. That 100 years ago we had that. So we said, let us take this bill to select committee for 1 day. And we will change that because it's not reflective of Guyana today. It's a feature of the colonial era. They decided to pass it with that in place. So if anybody gets killed in Guyana today, you got to go and hunt an Immigration Agent General. That was from the period of indentureship to inform them before you start the inquiry. It's just rushing through things through Parliament. The Parliament doesn't meet. And so we see major attempts of the executive to control not just the agenda of the legislature, but to truncate debate and to change much of what we had done, the spirit of the constitutional reforms that we had put in place. And so it is these two issues that bother us tremendously. Because as you know, we had the most far-reaching constitutional change, I would say, anywhere in the Western Hemisphere in 2001. In that period, recognizing the complexity of our society, we put enshrined in the new constitution 5 commissions. These commissions, to sit on one of them, you have to have 2/3 support from the National Assembly. It meant bipartisan support. What are these commissions? We call them the Rights Commission. No country in this hemisphere has those commissions. One for gender, because we recognize the vulnerable groups who are women. One for indigenous people, children, human rights, and ethnic relations. Given the complex nature of our society, we felt that we had to have these commissions in place and approach them in a bipartisan manner. They're almost truncating all these commissions. The Ethnic Relations Commission is not functioning, so they're replacing a constitutional commission now by an executive action setting up a ministry to do social cohesion. But the budget, the huge budget for social cohesion in that ministry is used in a partisan manner, more divisive among our people than bringing them together. So those are being eroded, the constitutional things. I mentioned the 4 sectoral committees. We didn't have those in our constitution. In 2001, we put them in place because we believe that the government must be accountable and ministers must go to these bodies to account for their stewardship and their sectors. So what we did, we had the majority at that time. We could have taken chairmanship of every one of those 4. The one is on natural resources, the other on economic services, one on social services, and the other one on foreign affairs, covering the gamut of government. And what we decided to share it. They will chair 2, we'll chair 2, and we rotate the chairmanship. I mentioned how that's being eroded. The management of parliament, before that, the constitutional change, the executive used to control parliamentary agenda totally. We then did where both sides had equal numbers and the speaker chaired it. We reduced the powers of the service commissions, the judicial, police, teaching service, and the public service commissions, in an attempt to have a more inclusive society given the nature. I can go on and tell you about all the changes to the Constitution that we made in 2001 because we recognized that our society had needed these complex ways of moving forward. And so today, all of those features that we put in place to safeguard people and their rights are being eroded. And that is why there is a big worry about it. Because if that happens, if you control the courts, like recently, a private individual sued the government because the government awarded a contract for $6 million above the second rank tender. It is a contract for the award of the meters for GPL, the power company, the meters. And so this company sued the government. The judge gave them a month to adjourn the case for a month. And then, to our surprise, the Attorney General approached the judge, and then the matter was heard within days, and there was a ruling in favor of the state. They argued, well, the state can't wait. So if you have a decision, now if I'm a private individual or we in the opposition, if we try to get an early date for any issue, you can't get it. But the state now can influence the judiciary to give an early date. So there is no fairness anymore. We've been waiting for 2 years so far to have our elections petition heard. Although in our law, it says it must be heard continuously and urgently, because it's an elections petition. And we can't get an early date for that, because they file a lot of interlocutory matters. So even if you're an investor, in Guyana, and you run afoul of the government for contract law or anything else, forget the rights issue for a time, and the state has control of the judiciary, then you will never get justice. And so that's why, as I said before, it's so vital that we preserve the separation of powers and we zealously guard these institutions that we've worked hard over the years to make independent from a period of the paramountcy of the party when they fall under the party in the government, that we preserve those gains. And hopefully the International Center for Democracy would look at those 2 sets of issues. On the economy, and maybe I just say a few words about this. Our philosophy differs significantly. Every single major investment that came in Guyana, including ExxonMobil, came under the People's Progressive Party. Oil was found by ExxonMobil under the People's Progressive Party. The economy has flatlined. There are two sectors, two companies that are producing large quantities of gold now that have kept the growth rate positive, and both came under the PPP. Not a single major investment from abroad. And if you talk to any businessman in Guyana, if you do an informal survey, any businessman, they're not investing. They're not going to invest because they feel insecure about their capital. Capricious raids, capricious statements from the tax authorities, the tax authorities have been politicized. Agencies that were set up to defend, like say, against money laundering are being used now, say SOPU, which was set up by the PPP under the authority of the Commissioner to support the Anti-Money Laundering Act and the Financial Intelligence Unit. Now they report no longer to the Commissioner of Police, but directly to the Office of the President. And their list no longer, they don't go after drug dealers anymore or money launderers. We haven't had a single case of that in years. They've gone after political opponents. And people, particularly the business community, shaking them now. And so in that atmosphere, you're not going to have a change in the situation. Already the economy is in doldrums, and the only way you can look forward to a change if there is investment that will create jobs in the future, etc. If you go to Guyana, everything. You talk to the miners and they will tell you now our environment has changed significantly, the small miners, and the sector is on the decline. Construction is on the decline. Forestry. Sugar workers now, by the end of this year, of the 17,000 sugar workers we had, when we left office working, earning a living, 10,000 would lose their jobs. That is with a family of 50,000 people in a population of 750,000, 50 to 80,000 people. Don't know from next year where they're going to be earning. It will make these places into ghost towns like at Wales, etc. And so that is happening, and the government seems to be focused only on oil, and they're selling now that oil will be the solution to all of Guyana's problems. But we've been saying oil can be a blessing or it could be a curse. And that is why we've been advocating strongly for a sensible assessment of the prospects of oil and a nuanced understanding of how oil proceeds can be integrated into an economy without damaging it fundamentally, as has happened in so many parts of the world. Venezuela, 3 million barrels of oil exported per day, but food shortages. Look at many other countries, Nigeria, many other parts of the world. Poverty, even Trinidad and Tobago now. You go to Trinidad and Tobago and you go to Laventille, and although we don't have oil, we don't have the sort of extreme poverty that you see witness in those areas. And oil can only exacerbate that. And the Dutch disease, the change in relative prices will kill all the other sectors if they're not already killed by this capricious, almost uninformed government action to some of the major sectors of the economy. So we've been arguing, we're saying, have a nuanced understanding of oil. First of all, oil may bring large amount of wealth in the future, or it may bring very little. Look at 2014, the oil price per barrel, $130 nearly. By the time mid-2015, it fell to $28 a barrel. it's gone up now to about $50 a barrel. Such a precipitous drop. If oil falls into the $20 a barrel, then ExxonMobil may not even be able to pump the oil. So oil proceeds are very volatile. The markets move on all sorts of things, not necessarily just supply and demand. There are a whole range of things that can move the market. And we're saying if you kill the labor-intensive sectors, rice, sugar, mining, and forestry, construction, retail trade, where large numbers of people are being employed, and try to replace it by only a capital-intensive industry like oil and gas. As ExxonMobil said, they would spend probably $5 billion over the next few years, but you'll have 300 jobs. You'll have 300 jobs. So where are you going to get the employment for these people? And that is why we have to make sure that the rest of the economy is healthy and integrate oil proceeds in a manner that does not destroy the rest of the economy. And you know, the Norwegian model that we spoke about, etc. But this government already promising people free gas, a check in everybody, you don't have to work in the future, you know. And what about the years when you don't get oil money? What about the years when you don't get oil money? So their whole philosophy on economic matters, which I would not deal with too much here, the whole philosophy is one that we don't subscribe to. Spending wantonly on things that don't create greater welfare for people or lend to the productive capacity. Wanton spending, wasteful spending. Then taxing heavily to support the spending, and borrowing phenomenally. The IMF has said the debt to GDP ratio will go from 50%, and we brought it down from 913% in 1992 to 50% by the time we left. We'll go up back to 19%, to 60% of GDP by 2019. This is the sort of approach. So spend wantonly, tax people, and borrow enormously. And that is precisely the path that Burnham followed, that led to our country being, when we left office, according to Carl Greenidge himself, that we were spending 153% of revenue to pay debts. 153% of revenues to pay debt. That's what the PPP took over, and we should never forget that. By the time we left office, we were spending 4% of revenue, down from 153% to pay debts. We restored a bankrupt country to economic viability. That's what we did. That legacy. And so our philosophy is different. But let me come back. I see the mission statement of the International Center for Democracy speaks about green issues. I can tell you about the approach to green issue, how we were earning money by the sale of forest carbon. It was an economic strategy. For this government, the green strategy is about planting trees. It's not about planting trees. It's a replacement of an old polluting model that ensures prosperity for a country by one that maintains the path to prosperity, but does it in a manner that is more environmentally friendly. That is what we are trying to get over. They've killed the hydropower, saying it was corrupt. And a lot of the things that they were talking about, the corruption, now they have had 2 years in government, 50 audits. We keep saying to them, lock up the people who you find corrupt. But they said that. Then Norway just came out with a study and said, the only way forward to achieve our targets is to build the same Amila Fall that they killed. By this year, 2017, that hydropower would have been producing power that would have led to 50% cut nearly in the price of power. Not a single cent of debt on the treasury, because it was a $750 million US private investment that would have added 2 percentage points to GDP. That was what Amila would have done. Would have made a big difference to our manufacturing sectors, etc. So a lot of these things are economic issues. the reason I don't want to focus on that too much is we will fight that battle in Guyana. We'll fight it because every country has economic issues and differences of views. And people are assessing our views and theirs in Guyana. So, but for an international center, they have to focus more on the universal values. And universal values that are recognized around the world are the two that I mentioned before. Free democracy, and secondly, the doctrine of the separation of power, vital for the future. And so I hope that we will see an enormous amount of work being done in this area, and all of you can help. If we stay silent on this matter, then we will deserve the type of country our country will become. And many of you still have a great interest in that country. You all can make a difference. Every single one of you in this room can make a difference. Please get involved. You know, some may be able to help these guys financially, but others with just their time and effort. And meeting people and talking to them and lobbying. You know, we have a lot of elected leaders who share here in the United States of America, who share concerns, we're not asking them to take sides, as I said before, but who share concerns about erosion of democracy. Please use your influence to lobby them so that they pay attention to what's happening, so that we don't go back to that horrible, turbulent past that caused so many of our people grief, you know, all sorts of grief. And so I want to urge you to support the center. I want to thank the members again for inviting me here and to congratulate them on the appointment. Thank you very much.
Let's have a nice round of applause for President Bharrat. Stand up, sir. He will be around my work for a few minutes over there. You want a picture or even ask some questions, you'll have an opportunity to do so. So, we're moving to the second phase of the evening, which is a point where we will invite you on the dance floor. I think the band is going to play, and the bar is open, and so I think you'll have a wonderful time. But before we formally close, where is Mr. Roy Ramsaran? I know he's planning on the run reunion, which is on what's the date? 29th of July. There are many other reunions, but because I'm in Port Bryan, I have to.
Where does he disappear?
Now let me introduce my friend, Mr. Robert Mohammed, Chief Operating Officer, Communications Engineer, and in fact, we have reasons to be proud. One of the very first to have granted a license to operate a radio here in the United States. So he will move the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Deepu, for your gracious introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, my task this evening, of course, as Deepu told you, is perhaps to deliver one of the shortest speech ever in my broadcasting career. It is my privilege and great joy for me to extend the vote of thanks this evening. And of course, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of mine of the International Center for Democracy. Tonight, firstly, I want to thank you for being part of history in the making this evening, has now launched the International Center for Democracy as we take off from this launch pad and propel to follow our trade, to fight for democracy and to restore democracy wherever our services are needed. So on behalf of all of us at the International Center for Democracy, I want to extend to all of you our most gracious thanks for you to be here tonight. I also want to thank all our members, and especially it could not have happened without the contributions from our sponsors and underwriters. So, in short, I don't want to keep you from the other festivities, but from all of us, we thank you very much for being here as part of this history meeting. Thank you very much.
Before everyone leaves, let me just also announce that President Jagdeo will be at Royal Empress Hall on Sunday. So what he just said to me is that if you really want to see the Bharrat Jagdeo get political, come meet him on Sunday, 3 o'clock, Royal Empress Hall. It'll be an open forum. It'll be a great way for you to hear him in his political world. So please join him and all of the sponsors for that. Now we formally open up the hall for nothing else. All right, I just turned to the organizers and there's nothing else, so let's just have a really great time. I personally would like to thank you all for being here, right, here me home. And I also like to thank you for taking the time and effort on a Friday night in July to be here to launch this wonderful organization. Thank you so much, and long live the ICD. One more announcement. I was reminded there is a photo booth. There's a photo booth outside. Great pictures. It really comes out very nice. It makes you even look better than what you normally look. I tried it. So please, we encourage you to go.